filters are silver impregnated to prevent bacterial growth. There's no priming required. It's NSF 42 certified. Optional fluoride filters can reduce fluoride up to 95%. Easy to set up and use. Doesn't require electricity. Purify water from lakes, streams, ponds, and wells. This filter system leaves in beneficial minerals, which is key. Save money by not buying bottled water and avoid BPA that leaches from the plastic. ProPure is the best gravity-fed filter out there. It's what my family uses. INFOWARS.com already has the lowest price on ProPure. But if you add the promo code WATER at checkout, you get an additional 10% off at INFOWARS.com. You can also call to order 888-253-3139.
We are back on tonight's InfoWars Nightly News. We are joined now by Chelsea Schilling. She's a writer for WorldNet Daily, and she is exposing the chilling fact that Facebook and other social network sites are making it easier for pedophiles to find their victims and to link between each other. And this is an ongoing, serious issue. Thanks for joining us, Chelsea.
Thank you for having me.
So explain basically what's going on, where your research has led, all the dark avenues, and then let's get into the issues for modern society, how we preserve civil rights while prosecuting people who are clearly harming children. But first of all, Facebook, why are they allowing this to go on, and what are you finding in your research?
Well, first off, what I found was unimaginable. And, you know, I really expected to find something in there, but never nearly what I did find. It was pretty shocking. I mean, we're talking about children who are having their photos uploaded to Facebook by cell phone in many cases, not every case, and also videos of adults sexually abusing these children, actually having intercourse on these videos and photos. So that was some of the worst stuff I found. And I found this by going into Facebook and creating alias profiles. In other words, they weren't me. I was pretending to be somebody else. I took photos off the internet of sexy women who were promiscuous, and I built this huge profile out of it. And I used terms like Lolita 13, you know, PTHC, which is preteen hardcore pornography. And I used those as my likes, including the term incest, which Facebook apparently tends to allow, because anytime you search in their search bar, you can often find groups for incest and likes. And so I use those terms, and because I use those terms, pedophiles were able to locate me based on my interests and sort of deduce that I was one of them, and either they friended me or I friended them. And many times, while these photos were completely available to the public, and I did see their albums, that's how I knew who to friend, whenever they did friend me and I got in, the albums became much worse. And I started seeing this, and these pedophiles are trading photos among themselves. If you go through their friends list, there are hundreds of people long, and they're people just like them. That's the thing. There are two types of friends that these pedophiles tend to have. They aren't on these accounts, these Facebook accounts like you and I, to speak with our friends and family. These are just completely fictitious people here where they upload photos and it's a false user. And the reason they're on there is to trade photos with other pedophiles. And usually they are original images of their own sexual abuse that they upload and they trade with these pedophiles. The other kind of friend that these pedophiles tend to have are America's children. They're unsuspecting children. They go out and they friend students in high school, middle school, whatever the case may be. They find children and they friend them. And in some cases, they'll strike up a conversation, they'll chat with them, they'll exchange photos if they can, often nude photos. And then even in some cases, they will actually try to meet these children.
So the kind of evidence they're posting on Facebook, is it the kind of evidence law enforcement can use to issue warrants? Are these clear cases where people actually are hurting children? If so, why are they not being prosecuted? But then let's get into how this ties into the overall online atmosphere where they're trying to curb civil liberties. Clearly, these are crimes, but they're going after people for inappropriate content on Facebook, YouTube, shutting down sites for using news clips and things like that, while leaving up clips of nudity, of violence, of copyright infringement, and on and on.
Isn't it ridiculous? No, when I actually found these photos, and I have to say this, in every case I reported them. So if they were a child being sexually abused by an adult, As soon as I found it, it went straight to the FBI via its IC3.gov reporting form. That was the best way that I found to do it. I called the FBI several different offices and spoke with them, and they all referred me to that one site so that I could actually turn in some of those photos. The thing was, in the beginning, I started flagging many of the photos, not the most severe ones, but many of the photos on Facebook, hoping that the profiles would be taken down after Facebook got wind of it. And that wasn't necessarily the case. In many cases, those photos remained up there for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and it was just awful going back there and seeing that I had reported these. It didn't let me report them again because it says, hey, you've already reported these photos. You know, you can't do that again, and the photos didn't come down. So then I went to Facebook. I couldn't leave it up there much longer. I mean, that was my responsibility to go to the FBI. I took the photos that Facebook wouldn't take down, and I actually took them to the FBI, and they were down within 24 hours. The FBI did have a real positive response with individual photos that are reported to them. Now, the problem is there's a prevention problem. So, you know, these photos should never have made it onto Facebook in the first place. That's a real issue here. So the law enforcement authorities can only deal with what's reported to them. They can handle these images, and they do a great job doing it. But the problem is, if there's not a prevention tactic here, you know, we have an issue that's spiraling out of control. And Facebook could really easily fix this, you know, without this becoming a huge, you know, outside control thing. They could police themselves. One of the ways that Facebook, I believe, can do that without spending too much money or resources on this would really be to just take down the incest groups, the PTHC groups, the kid sex young groups, the F young girls groups, the F young boys groups. I could sit here and go on, and I have in my stories about these types of groups that are actually permitted on Facebook. And even if they do take them down, many times they're in there for a very long time. This is how pedophiles meet one another. It's how they get validation for what they're doing. And then it also creates a market for their photos so that they can exchange them. It's very simple to find those terms. You go to the Facebook search engine, you just type them in, and you get results very easily. So this isn't something that Facebook can't police on its own. Right now, it's something that Facebook appears unwilling to do.
Chelsea, where do you feel like the rubber meets the road with SOPA, with ACTA, with CISPA, and other online treaties and bills they're trying to push through? We've seen some of the greatest flourishing of liberty and political discussions. All that's been enlivened from online. But, of course, it does make it easier for certain types of criminals to associate along the lines of what we're talking about and so forth. How can we protect children and protect ourselves online while keeping freedom alive? And what do you make of this type of legislation?
See, that's the end goal of a lot of people who've written me especially. You know, why should we have to force Facebook to do this from outside law enforcement or investigations and such? You know, if it comes down to it, it is child porn. If it doesn't come down, you know, I don't have a problem. This is illegal content. Somebody needs to do something about this. Sure. But first and foremost, I would like for Facebook to take the initiative. I mean, think about it. With their IPO launching, this is a huge risk factor. I personally believe that it probably should have been disclosed in their S1 filing with the SEC. I spoke to them about that. It is not in their current S1 filing. This is a risk. This is a huge risk. It could cost them money in a big way. And I really feel like it would be easy for the company to sort of police this. And then, you know, who knows how investors might feel about that. I think I would probably feel better as an investor putting my money into Facebook and knowing that this was a real prerogative for them, that they weren't going to allow this stuff to invade the site that I'm investing in.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we have to find ways to do both. What do you make of pedophile rings in terms of where it's been connected with high-up political levels? We saw the scandals with various coaches, Sandusky and the people from the other universities last year. Some of those reports indicated that a number of even higher-level, more elite, richer donor-type people may have been protected in those scandals. How does that parallel with the stuff that's happening in the online realm?
I honestly think that, you know, this is my personal opinion, this is an extremely uncomfortable and inconvenient subject. Nobody wants to even acknowledge that it's such a huge problem. They look the other way. Nobody wants to talk about this. You know, I don't get my jolly sitting here talking about poor children being raped on Facebook. This is not something that anybody enjoys talking about. However, if we look the other way, if we pretend it's not happening, I don't care if it's a pastor doing it. I don't care if it's a Boy Scout leader doing it. I don't care if it's, you know, whatever it is, a teacher. It doesn't matter. We don't need to be protecting these people. You know, we need to be protecting the kids, because the problem is, in a lot of these cases, these children are being abused many times by their own parents. They don't have people to stick up for them, and that's why this is such an issue. You know, who is going to support the children in this situation if not Facebook, where they're, you know, protecting the victims of this situation? And, you know, I didn't mention earlier that I did spend 2 full months trying to get a response from Facebook about this. I called them, I emailed them multiple times, and I was really trying to get them to go on record. I want to work with them. I don't want to force their hand from the outside and try to get the DOJ to investigate or Congress to do something about it. That's something that to me would be a last resort. I really prefer that Facebook would handle this internally. And the thing is, they sent me a statement about 2 hours after my part 1 of the series ran. This is a 4-part series, right. And it ran on Matt Drudge's site, the Drudge Report. And because of that, and because of our great readers, we received 1.5 million hits on that first part. And so it got Facebook's attention. Within 2 hours of it running, they decided to contact me. And they sent a statement that really seemed sort of recycled and didn't answer any of the questions I had, and I sent them a very long list of them. So we ended up having an off-the-record conference call with some Facebook executives, and I can't go into what we discussed there clearly, but I will say that the status quo is where it's at. It, you know, from my impression coming out of that, nothing was about to change. And I think that if I were to speculate, and I think it's a pretty good guess, I believe that to actually do something about this, Facebook would actually have to acknowledge that it really is a problem on their website. And to do that when they're about to launch an IPO, to them, it's a huge risk factor. They don't want to come out with this and acknowledge that this issue is as big as it is on their website.
But that's illustrative, too, that it's so difficult to address this issue, but Zuckerberg's brag that we're spying on all of you. Google has pretty much said similar things. They're tracking everything online. They consider the general population to be privy to being spied upon, but they won't go after clear-cut criminals, or at least people who think it's cool to associate with that criminal culture.
Isn't it ridiculous? You hear all these complaints about how Facebook is deeming comments inappropriate and flagging them and such, and people are complaining because it's political speech, it's free speech, it's essentially stuff that doesn't really matter to anybody and doesn't harm anybody at all, and is not illegal. And you know, somehow they always find those comments, don't they? They can regulate those comments, but for some reason, it's difficult for Facebook to find the term incest in its groups and PTHC and all of these horrible terms using, you know, that the pedophiles use to identify one another and they like. I really have a hard time believing that. Yeah,
and I think that speaks volumes. Chelsea Schilling, your articles are at WorldNet Daily. They've also been covered, as you pointed out, on the Drudge Report. Thanks for joining us, and we'll speak to you in the future.
Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye. And that's it for tonight's InfoWars Nightly News. Please consider subscribing to PrisonPlanet.tv. We count on your support to get the word out about our broadcasts, cover the hard topics, the questions the mainstream media will not address. Thanks. We'll be back again tomorrow. Good night.